Okie dokes. Well, we'll give Lesver hair a wash and then we'll come back in just a second. Back from the basins, all washed, ready to go. Now, classic scenario where when I was talking about partings, I put this parting in where it was when we came in, tend to flip-flop the hair around. It predominantly goes on to the left, but as I've always said in the videos prior, that if the hair is flip-flopped around, then go to a centre parting, and then if it's flip-flopped, you will have some discrepancy on the opposite side of the parting where the layers are fractionally shorter because of the travel, but the reality of that is that it means that, you know, we are going to get a generally more balanced shape. Say the hair then gets flung in the opposite direction and you do something that's completely unbalanced to kind of accommodate a left hand side parting, it could look like you've got some kind of weird ledge in the hair. So we'll just go in the middle and that'll make it happy days. Especially with the shape we're going to create, cutting a concave shape, if the hair is flip-flopped around a lot and it's not dead in the centre, it can look quite strange. So we do need to think about that. I was just, how do you say your name again?
Levzer.
I was just talking to Levzer when I was washing her hair. So the previous haircut she had was a lockdown haircut, cut by her mum following one of my tutorials, and it's absolutely brilliant. So her mum has got a career in hairdressing, no doubt. She said she was going to tell her when she sees her that I've sent my 10 out of 10 good job recommendation. It is, honestly, I've cross-checked it. It is pretty much bang on. So that is very good. Well done, Mum. So what we're going to do is, as always, take a section from the high point of the head down towards the back of the ear, and that way we're going to separate the hair from the thickest part at the back, where there is absolutely a ton of hair in this particular instance. Well, there's a ton of hair all over. So once we've separated from front to back, we can just pop a clip in our back section to get it neatly out of the way, just like so. And then we'll do exactly the same on the opposite side, just like this. So from the high point of the head, and the easy way to find the high point of the head is make sure the head is in a neutral position, place the comb on top of the head, and at the point of which it touches down is the high point. Take it down towards the back of the ear, comb the hair forward, comb the hair backwards, pop another clip in it. So we're going to work in the front first. Always my preference to start in the front. So sections wise, what we're going to do is we're going to take a vertical section that runs all the way down the head, about 1 centimetre wide roughly, and that's going to be our starting point. Always start over the ear, because what we're going to generally do is over direct the hair back towards this first line, because the hair tends to get weaker around the front where the hairline drops back. We're better to retain weight and remove it later than we are to lose that weight around the front. And ultimately we can end up with 2 haircuts around the front as well if we're not careful. So this is our first section. So I'm right-handed, and so if I want to cut from short to long, my body position needs to be with my back facing you, the audience. Because what I want to do is I want to try and cut from short to long, not from long to short. It's very, very challenging, and I know I've come across loads of hairdressers that have sort of said, no, I can cut from long to short, don't worry, blah blah blah. Great, if you can do it, knock yourself out, but I think it's very, very difficult to get consistent and even tension on the hair and cut down. So we've got our first section there, and we've cut a diagonal line of about 45 degrees, shortest point being in the middle, longest point being out towards the outer edge. We're going to take that section and then we're going to split that section down into 2. So we're going to have a clear guide for our next section, and we can now pull this hair back out of the way. We're going to take a larger section. Now a section here is about 2 inches roughly, and we're going to take this hair and we're going to over direct this hair back to the first section, which is super easy to do. Just pick the hair up pull it towards you, elevate the hair. Now remember, we do want to change our body position, so I'm going to move my body position. I wanted you to see the over direction. This hair is now travelling back to the vertical hair from the very first section, and then we're going to come round to the front again, changing our body position, elevate the hair up, finger angle 45 degrees. We can clearly see our guide. We're making sure the hair is over directed. I'm going to cut a square line up towards the ceiling. Now we're not going to point cut. You know why? I don't need to say why, it was in the consultation. If you missed the consultation part of this tutorial, you might want to go back and see why we're not point cutting the hair. So I'm going to take the next section now. So I'm going to take that very first section that I cut, and I'm just going to do exactly the same section that I just did. Split that first section into two, because I want to over direct all of this hair back to the starting point. So I want to take all this hair back to the point at which I started at, so then an even over direction to one fixed point on the head, and then we can do exactly the same thing on the opposite side. Again, body position in front of your client, angle your fingers up, over direct the hair back, and eventually what will happen is, especially with the haircut we've currently got, which is more shaped around the face, which we'll emphasize again in a bit, we will have less hair to cut because of the over direction. So the hair gets longer in the opposite direction of which we push the hair. So if we push the hair back, it gets longer towards the face, and if we push the hair forward, it gets longer towards the back. We're actually doing pushing the hair back, so it's getting longer towards the face. There is a lot of shape in there, which is from a haircut where it's all over directed forward. So it is longer in the back at the moment, and there is less hair here. So we are trying to create volume and movement in this hair up here, and that is really, really super important when it comes to putting layers into this particular technique. And then we can do is cross-check our hair in the opposite direction, and we're looking for a line that runs from short to long, shorter at the crown, longer towards the face. But we do need to remember that there is already a haircut in place. That is shorter around the front. So what we're going to do is we're going to end up with a slightly different result to what we would do normally, because there is less hair in this front section because it was all pulled forward and cut on a square line. So we end up with a more square result than a short to long result because of the nature of the previous haircut. So if you don't know what the previous haircut was, and then you pick it up and you're thinking it should have been short to long, then you can ultimately be confused by why that's happened, and maybe even retake your sections and cut it shorter. But you do need to be mindful of the haircut that was there previously, and if you think something's happened, try and work out why it happened, and don't just go back in and say, well, it didn't work or whatever. In this particular instance, there is a haircut that is, I suppose, counterintuitive, but not exactly into the shape that I'm creating, because I'm still putting layers into the hair. I'm still adding texture, movement and volume. So really simple now. What we do is we take a piece of hair, this side that we cut earlier, and we're going to put it down over here. So now we've got that piece of hair down over here, we're going to then take a section that runs over the top of that. So the section runs down over the section and over the ear in exactly the same way it did on the opposite side. We're then going to take this section, elevate the hair up towards the ceiling, like so. I'm now standing behind so that I can cut from short to long in the opposite direction. I can clearly see my guide in there, and once I can clearly see my guide, I'm happy to go. Same finger angle, 45 degrees, aiming up towards the ceiling, cutting a diagonal line. Super simple. Next section, split that previous section into two, camera B, take another section as we did previously, approximately 2.5 inches in front of the subdivided section we took for our guide, elevate the hair up, make sure that we are over directing the hair back to the guide, finger angle the same, clear guideline, cut a square line. Lovely stuff. So this time we're going to take a little piece of our guide away, but remember we want to over direct to the point at which we started. So we're going to pick up all the hair now. And this is the thing with over direction, you do end up picking up a lot of hair when you cut it. And fortunately you've cut some of the previous sections, so you are handling less hair when it comes to actually cutting, but you do have to be able to handle quite a lot of hair in your fingers. And exactly what happened previously, we've only got a very small amount of hair to cut off because of the nature of the previous haircut. So we take our section, opposite direction, just cross check, make sure that we've got exactly the same thing going on, which we have. We also need to cross check with our hair in the position at which it's going to sit naturally, because remember we cut a concave, so we need to over direct the hair to check our shape, because if we don't over direct the hair so that it all sits solid, it can look like we've cut it with a jagged edge, if you like, not the cleanest line. It needs to be in the position at which it's going to live, and we're cutting a concave, so it's really important that we check it in a concave. So now we can take the clips out of the back, just like so. Good stuff. So we're going to continue this shape now around the head. So we're going to take a piece of hair from our very, very first section that we cut that went over the ear, down, and then we're going to clip the hair that's in front of that section out of the way. Just like that. Same again on the opposite side. Great, so we've got two really nice even guides. Now what we're not going to do with the rest of the hair is over direct it to any one fixed point. The main reason for that is because the hair is incredibly thick. So we don't want to build up weight. We want to remove weight to make the hair lighter and sit with more volume. So what we're going to do is take our section that we just took over the top of our previous section, the very, very first guide section we cut, so we've got a nice clear guideline, and then we're going to take a section that is approximately 1.5 centimeters wide, push all the hair back out of the way nice and neatly, and then pick up our section. And now in terms of body position, again we want to be standing in front more or less of our client, because we are right-handed. If you're left-handed, you would be doing the opposite. But if you are right-handed and you are cutting the right side of the client's head, your body position will be in front of the section, and you'll be cutting a diagonal line up towards the ceiling. Again, if you're left-handed, the reverse will be true. Take that first section that we just cut, split it into two, take our section down, again approximately 1.5 centimeters wide, pick up the hair and make sure you've got a nice clean and obvious guide to work from. And we're going to just travel around the head like this, so we're going to keep our sections coming straight out from the head shape, finger angle at 45 degrees. And what we're going to create throughout the shape is shorter layers on the top of the head and retain the length and the weight towards the perimeter. It runs from the point of which we started all the way down towards the nape, and then we'll split our previous section into two, push the hair forward, pick up this hair, set our finger angle, and cut a diagonal line that travels up towards the ceiling. Some people might need to take this in two, and that's absolutely fine. I can hold it in one hand, so that's, you know, makes it a little easier. But if you need to take it in two, that's also not a problem. Split that section you've just cut into two, so that you've got a clear guide to travel forward with. And I'm going to retain my body position on the right hand side, and I'm going to work my way around to the centre back, because at the centre back I'll need to then swap sides, because if I want to cut short to long I need to move to the opposite side. So take a section down the back just like so, elevate the hair straight up to the ceiling, finger angle 45 degrees. You know, so many haircuts are just complete repetition. You know, they don't need to be anything else, guys. I think that's something that we kind of overlook. You know, even creative haircuts are hugely repetitive in the way that we approach them, and in the way that we cut them, in the way that, you know, they are created. And obviously there is an element of creative freedom within every haircut, but mostly what we're doing is a very, very repetitive thing. And I think the better we get at that repetitive thing, whatever it is, cutting layers, cutting graduation, bobs, whatever you're doing, the easier it is then to be creative. But, you know, this would be considered, you know, more interesting than a traditional square layer by cutting a concave into the hair. But for this concave layer to work and for it to look good, we need to follow the steps that we've taken on each and every section and just repeat ourselves over and over again, so that we can get the whole thing working succinctly. So we make sure that our haircuts are balanced and even. Now I'm in the centre back now, so I'm going to stop here and I'm going to travel around to the opposite side, and I'm going to work my way back towards the centre. Now, one thing that can happen here is that if these first sections weren't exactly the same, when you get into the centre back, you will ultimately have two haircuts that are different length. So this is where being super diligent about the sections that you take is really important. Actually, there is one more to take in this centre back, so we're just going to make sure we are dead in the middle. Just double check these things, guys. It's okay to, you know, think you've come to the centre back, especially when you've got so much hair to work with, and so much hair you can barely see the scalp when you take a section. So, you know, just be absolutely sure before you move on. You know, don't pretend like that it's all good when it's not. You can see that's really lifting nicely. So again, we're going to come around to the opposite side. Now obviously remember, we'd taken a piece of hair from that front section and pulled it into the back section. We're then going to split that hair down, elevate the hair straight up. We should have a nice clear guideline to cut from. And there's only a tiny bit to take off from the previous section, so don't ignore it, definitely cut it off. Split that section into two, push that hair forward, and then work your way back. Elevate the hair straight up, just like so. Finger angle 45 degrees, clear guideline, cut your section. Split the section into two. Now what I'm going to do with the next section is I'm going to show you what you would do if your fingers weren't long enough to hold the whole section in one go. So we pick up our section, we then cut a line through our section, we drop down the bottom, put it here, and then we pick up top of our section, make sure we can see our guide, work our way down, split that section into two, and then pick up the bottom of our section and make sure that there's nothing to take off. Now, because of the finger angle that we're cutting at, there's probably very little to take off at this point, but it just makes your life a little bit easier. Again, split that section into two, push the hair forward, pull this section back. Now we're coming round into the centre back now. So this is crunch time, guys, to see if we've done exactly the same thing on both sides. This is a bit like when you cut a one length and then you check both sides and you see if you've done the same thing on both sides. This is the layering equivalent. So we're nearly there. We've got one more section to do. That is through the whole centre back. Split that section we've just cut. Elevate the hair straight up, and Bob's your uncle. Just the dust to take off. So that takes practice, guys. That doesn't happen overnight, obviously, and you need to be diligent about how many sections you took and the width of your sections. I automatically then take the same size sections on both sides, but you do need to work at that. It won't happen like that every single time, and the way that you pull the hair out from the head, you need to make sure that it's travelling out from the head at 90 degrees. Each section is travelling out at 90 degrees to the centre back, and then you've done exactly the same thing on the opposite side. Now, to cross check a concave layer when the hair is this thick, or certainly when you're working around the head shape, is very, very tricky. So we're going to take a horizontal section just like so, that we split down the centre back. So we're going to have like a little triangle of hair, or a big triangle of hair in this instance. Pick the hair up, push the hair forward, make sure that it's in the position at which the finger angle should be, and there's just a tiny little bit of hair to remove there. Do exactly the same on the opposite side. So it's at this point, guys, you really want to assess, did the layering pattern that you created work? Is it working for, you know, what your client needs? Is it lifting the hair? Is it adding oomph? Yes, it's doing all of those things. I can see this hair is lifting off the scalp and it's still wet. So that's really working in terms of shape. It's given it more texture and more movement, but we haven't got the hair tucking inwards around the edges. We haven't got that shape that is created a rounded shape. We've still got all the square length through the bottom. So in terms of layer shape, I think that's worked really nicely. Right, so we'll spin you around and we'll just show you the back. So we've got some lovely layers in there, which has created some really nice lift in the shape. We've got a beautiful cascading wave going through there, and it's really beautiful hair, but it's really, really challenging, guys. And it, you know, it's one of those hair types that can go quickly the wrong direction, and you can create lots of frizz and lots of expansion and shapes that, you know, the client doesn't want to wear. Give more volume, more oomph, more texture through this top section without it being kind of too big and poofy. Thank you very much, guys, for joining me on this particular episode. If you've enjoyed it, hit the thumbs up button. Subscribe if you're new here for lots more content just like this, and I'll see you again in the next one.